The N64 game Conker's Bad Fur Day is considered by many a cult classic. I had a lot of fun with this over the years. Definitely one of the most fun platformers of all time, but it's also one of the most controversial games as well. Yeah, this is certainly not a game you would associate with Nintendo's family-friendly image, because most platformers during the time they were E-rated. So this did shock a lot of people when it had first came out over 2 decades ago. Especially for the parents who had bought the game for their kids thinking it was appropriate, but apparently not be able to read that this was meant for mature audiences. So the story of this one is that Conker, after a night of binge drinking, he's just trying to get home to his girlfriend Barry, while also being forced to save the world. Over the years, I always thought this was an intriguing game just because how developer Rare had gone this route. With the toy humor, the fourth wall breaking, the pop culture references, the profanity, the dark humor. The music is very good, and even the voice acting is excellent, making it one of the few N64 games to have it because of how little storage the N64 cartridge had. And how this isn't your usual typical Nintendo platformer either. The controls, definitely, they are horrendous by today's standards. Even going back to replace some of this, it was quite a struggle to say the least because I was using a keyboard and mouse. The gun controls are wonky, the aiming isn't that great. But as far as platforming goes, it's actually quite simple to control Conker. And while this is not one of the hardest N64 games I have played, it also really isn't that easy. I do find interesting that originally this game was going to be vastly different than what we had gotten. Conker's Quest was the first development of the game. It had got canceled and later retitled into 12 Tales Conker 64. The director, Chris Seaver, came in and said, alright, we're going to make this M-rated, we're going to make this unique, and we definitely going to make it memorable. I'm actually glad we had gotten this final version because it's so different to what had came beforehand. Other platformers such as Super Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie, definitely it was family friendly. This right here, it was a step into the mature rating that adults could get into. Unfortunately, it was a little too late because it sold poorly, only selling 55,000 units in its first month. It was a flop. And sure, like I said beforehand, while the gameplay mechanics haven't aged all that well, the story is pretty interesting. I mean, there's pop culture references from movies such as Alien, Saving Private Ryan, Jaws, and The Matrix. And speaking of which, my final level is the final where Barry and Conker are fighting the lobby, the parrying of The Matrix. And then Conker fighting the Xenomorph as the final boss. Even the multiplayer, which I think is pretty unique. And I had a lot of fun with that over the years. And while it's unfortunate we never gotten a sequel, this will always remain a classic to a lot of people out there. And even more than 2 decades later, if you somehow haven't played this, then definitely check it out because I believe it is well worth the time. I'm giving this video game an 8 out of 10. Honestly, Nintendo was ashamed of this one because they never had promoted it in their magazine Nintendo Power, which is where gamers found out about upcoming Nintendo games at the time. This at least did get some marketing in the form of a late night commercial, but other than that, many people didn't know that this was coming out. Plus, this game had came out a few months after the release of the PlayStation 2, and the GameCube was on the horizon, so it's no wonder this did so poorly in sales. Nonetheless, the legacy of this speaks for itself when you got iconic characters such as Conker, the Panther King, and among several others, making this still a very fun experience even more than 20 years later. And that's my review of Conker's Bad Fur Day. Okay, leave your comments down below in the section and let me know what you think about this video game. Alright, this is Slim Guy 172 saying peace out.